I blew out the candle for my 30th birthday in silence. My phone buzzed, but it was not a wish. It was a photo of my sister in Paris, captioning a surprise trip. My mother commented below that she is the one who makes them proud. I stared at the screen, knowing exactly who paid for that ticket. For 6 years, I was not their daughter. I was just the invisible bank account that funded their pride. My name is Sloane King. The silence in my apartment on the night of my 30th birthday was not peaceful. It was heavy, the kind of silence that pressed against your eardrums and made the hum of the refrigerator sound like a jet engine. I sat at my small kitchen table in Madison, Wisconsin, staring at a single vanilla cupcake I had bought from the grocery store on my way home from work. The wax candle stuck in the frosting was shaped like the number 3 and the number 0. The wick was burning low, threatening to drown in a pool of melting blue wax. But I could not bring myself to blow it out yet. Blowing it out would mean admitting that the wish I made every year was never going to come true. Outside, the wind was whipping off the lakes, rattling the drafty window frames I'd been meaning to fix for 2 years. I pulled my cardigan tighter around my shoulders. I kept the thermostat set to 62 degrees to save money on the heating bill. It was a habit I had formed in my early 20s, a discipline of self-denial that I wore like a second skin. I looked at my phone lying face up on the table next to the cupcake. The screen was black. It had been black for hours. I told myself they were just busy. Dad had his physical therapy appointments, or maybe his back was acting up again. Mom was probably running errands for the house or organizing one of her community charity drives. They were getting older. They forgot things. It was normal to forget dates, even if that date was the day their first child was born. I replayed these excuses in my head, a familiar script I had memorized over 3 decades. It was easier to believe they were forgetful than to believe they simply did not care. I finally leaned forward and blew out the candle. The smoke curled up, smelling of burnt wick and cheap sugar. Just as the smoke cleared, the phone buzzed against the hard wood of the table. My heart did a pathetic little leap in my chest. I reached for it, my thumb unlocking the screen before I could even check the caller ID, desperate for a text that said, "Happy birthday, Sloane, sorry we are late." It was not a text. It was a notification from social media. My younger sister, Kinsley, had posted a photo. I tapped the notification, and the screen filled with brightness. The photo was taken at O'Hare International Airport. Kinsley was beaming, her smile wide and perfect, her blonde hair falling in expertly styled waves over a designer trench coat. She was holding a passport in one hand and a glass of champagne in the other. Behind her, out of focus but unmistakable, was the departure board. The caption read, "Surprise trip. Paris. Here I come. Cannot wait to see the Eiffel Tower sparkle. Blessed travel Paris." I stared at the image. Paris. Kinsley was 26 years old. She worked part-time at a boutique that barely paid minimum wage and spent the rest of her time trying to become an influencer. She had been talking about Paris since she was 12, but talking and doing were 2 different things. A trip like that, booked last minute, cost thousands of dollars. Then I saw the comment pinned to the top. It was from our mother. "She is the one who makes us proud. Have the best time. Baby girl." The air left my lungs. It was not a slow exhale. It was a sudden vacuum, as if someone had punched me in the solar plexus. I read the sentence again. "She is the one who makes us proud." I sat there in my cold apartment, the unlit candles smoking in front of me. Today was my 30th birthday. I was the one who had graduated with honors. I was the one who had secured a stable job at Bright Hollow Health Solutions, working long hours in medical device sales to ensure I had a 401k and health insurance. I was the one who drove a 6-year-old sedan with a dent in the bumper because I did not want to pay for cosmetic repairs. I was the one who never asked for a dime. And yet, Kinsley was the one who made them proud. Because she was beautiful? Because she was charming? Because she was going to Paris? A cold clarity washed over me, sharper than the Wisconsin winter outside. It was a feeling I usually suppressed, burying it under layers of duty and obligation. But tonight, staring at that sentence, the suppression failed. I thought back to my promotion last year. I had become the youngest regional sales lead in my department. I had called Mom, breathless with excitement. She had said, "That is good. Sloan, really good. By the way, Kinsley needs a ride to her audition tomorrow. Can you take her?" The praise was a footnote, a transition sentence to get back to the main topic. Kinsley. I looked around my apartment. It was clean, functional, and sparse. My furniture was secondhand. I rarely bought new clothes. I cooked in bulk on Sundays to avoid buying lunch during the week. I lived this way because I was terrified of financial instability. I lived this way because 6 years ago, my parents had sat me down, faces grave, and told me they were drowning. Dad's health, the mortgage, the credit cards. They were in trouble. They needed help. So I helped. I became the safety net. I looked back at the phone. Kinsley's smile mocked me. Paris. Where did she get the money for Paris? My stomach turned over. A sick, sinking suspicion began to form in the back of my mind. It was a thought so ugly I wanted to push it away. But it clawed its way forward. I pushed the cupcake aside. I did not want it anymore. I stood up and walked to the living room, grabbing my laptop from the coffee table. I sat back down at the kitchen table, the wood hard and cold under my arms. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I had access to their joint account. I had set it up 6 years ago when I started transferring $500 a month to help them with the bills. They had given me the login so I could monitor the automatic transfers and help them manage the utility payments when Dad was in the hospital. I had not logged in for months. I usually just let the automatic transfer do its work, trusting that my contribution was keeping the lights on and the refrigerator stocked. I typed in the username, then the password. It took me 2 tries because my hands were shaking. "Please wait," the screen said. The little circle spun round and round. I held my breath. The dashboard loaded. The balance was low, alarmingly low, less than $400 in the checking account. But I was not looking for the balance. I clicked on the tab that said Transaction History. I scrolled past the grocery store charges and the gas station fills. My eyes scanned for the date of my last transfer. There it was, the first of the month. Transfer from Sloan King, $500. And then I looked at what happened 2 days later. Travel booking, $1,200. My breath hitched. I scrolled down. Luxury boutique, $340. Cash withdrawal, $200. Transfer to Kinsley King, $9,800. The number was so large it looked like a mistake. $9,800. The description next to it was typed manually. Gift. I felt like I was going to be sick. That transfer was dated 3 weeks ago. I kept scrolling, my eyes burning. I went back a month, then 2, then 6. The pattern was undeniable. It was a rhythm, a heartbeat of exploitation. Every month, on the 1st, my $500 hit the account, and every month, within 48 hours, money flowed out, not to the electric company, not to the pharmacy for Dad's medication, not to the mortgage lender. It went to clothing stores. It went to nice restaurants. It went to Ticketmaster, and over again. It went directly to Kinsley. I clicked on a transaction from 4 months ago, $400 to a spa in downtown Madison. I remembered that week. Mom had called me crying, saying they were short on the heating bill. I had sent an extra $200 that month. I had eaten instant noodles for 2 weeks to make up for it. They had gone to a spa. My hands were trembling so violently I could barely navigate the trackpad. I felt a strange ringing in my ears. It was the sound of my own stupidity shattering. For 6 years, I believed I was the dutiful daughter holding the family together. I believed my sacrifice was noble. I believed they needed me. I thought I was the pillar preventing the roof from collapsing on their heads. I was not a pillar. I was a resource. I looked at the specific transaction for the travel agency again. The date aligned perfectly with when Kinsley would have needed to book a flight to France. I clicked on the credit card statement linked to the account. The balance due was $18,000. Minimum payment warning flashing in red. I opened the details. Air France, Hôtel Le Maurice, Galeries Lafayette. They were not just scraping by. They were leveraging debt, and they were using my liquidity to service the interest while they funded a lifestyle they could not afford for a daughter who contributed nothing. I closed my eyes, and the image of the birthday cake came back to me. The solitary candle, the silence. My mother's comment echoed in my head. She is the one who makes us proud. Of course she made them proud. She was living the life they wanted to live, and she was doing it without the burden of conscience. She was the show pony. I was the plow horse. I looked at the total amount I had transferred over the last year, $6,000. Then I looked at the total amount transferred to Kinsley in the last year. It was over $15,000. They were not just giving her my money. They were giving her my money plus everything else they could borrow, steal, or scrape together. I felt a coldness settle in my chest that had nothing to do with the Wisconsin winter. It was the absolute zero of a heart finally freezing over. The grief of being forgotten on my birthday vanished, replaced by a razor-sharp rage. I looked at the screen one last time. If this is my money, I whispered to the empty room, my voice sounding foreign to my own ears. If this is my money, then I just paid for a vacation to Paris for the very people who treat me like an insurance policy they hope they never have to acknowledge. I reached for the mouse. I did not close the laptop. Instead, I opened a new tab. I needed to see everything. I needed to see exactly how much I was worth to them. Because for the first time in 30 years, I realized that to the King family, I was not a person, I was a bank. And the bank was about to close. The glow of the laptop screen was the only light left in the room. My eyes felt dry and gritty, but I could not look away from the rows of numbers. Each line item was a transaction, but to me, they looked like coordinates on a map of a life I had been stupid enough to fund. It was not just about the money. Money can be replaced. It was about the architecture of my family, a structure built on a foundation so crooked I was amazed I had not noticed the slant until tonight. Or maybe I had noticed it. Maybe I had just spent 30 years tilting my head to the side to make it look straight. Growing up, the roles in the King household were assigned before we even knew how to speak. Kinsley was the sun. She was bright, loud, and commanded gravity. I was the moon, there to reflect her light or simply fade into the background when the day started. It was never stated explicitly. My parents did not wake up every morning and decide to ignore me. It was subtler than that, which made it harder to fight. I was the easy child. I was the one who did her homework without being asked. I was the one who ate her vegetables. I was the one who did not need attention. So I did not get any. I remember when we moved into this house, I was 8 and Kinsley was 4. There were 2 bedrooms available for us. One faced the street, with a large bay window that let in floods of golden afternoon light. It had fresh cream carpet and a built-in window seat. The other room faced the backyard, looking directly at the tool shed. It was smaller, drafty, and the closet door stuck if you pulled it too hard. There was no discussion. Kinsley got the room with the light. Sloane does not mind. My mother had said, smoothing the duvet on Kinsley's new bed. Sloane likes it quiet. I did not like it quiet. I was 8. I was afraid of the dark. But I stood in the doorway and nodded, because that is what the good daughter did. She nodded. She made things smooth. This pattern bled into everything. Kinsley's wardrobe was a rotating carousel of trends. If she wanted the sparkly denim jacket because everyone at school had one, she got it. If she needed the specific brand of sneakers that cost over $100, Dad would grumble for a minute but then pull out his wallet, saying he did not want her to feel left out. I wore Kinsley's hand-me-downs. Even though I was 4 years older, she would outgrow things or get bored of them, and they would slide across the hall into my drafty room. I learned to dress in things that did not quite fit, styles that were 2 seasons old. When I asked for something new, the answer was always a variation of the same logic. You are sensible. Sloane. You do not care about that superficial stuff. We need to save money. They praised me for my lack of needs. They called me low maintenance. They called me independent. I wore those words like badges of honor. not realizing they were actually training wheels for neglect. The sharpest memory, the one that still sat like a stone in my gut, happened when I was 16. Kinsley, then 12, had decided she wanted to be a dancer. She had zero experience, but she had watched a show on television and decided this was her destiny. My parents immediately enrolled her in a premier studio. The tuition was steep, the costumes were made of silk and sequins and cost more than our weekly grocery bill. I remember watching Mom glue rhinestones onto a leotard at the kitchen table, her face soft with concentration. I had found something too. I had fallen in love with photography. I had joined the school club and borrowed a battered camera from the teacher, Mr. Henderson. I had an eye for it. I loved the way the world looked through a lens, ordered, still, and controllable. I found a brochure for a weekend workshop. It was not expensive, certainly not compared to a semester of dance tuition. It required a digital camera of my own. I brought it up at dinner. I had rehearsed my speech. I had my grades printed out to show I was maintaining a 4.0 average. "Dad," I said, waiting for a pause in Kinsley's monologue about a pirouette, "I was wondering if I could take this photography workshop, and maybe, for my birthday, I could get a used camera?" The silence was instant. Dad put his fork down. He looked tired. He always looked tired when I asked for something. A stark contrast to the energy he found when Kinsley wanted something. "Photography?" he asked, chewing slowly. "That is an expensive hobby. Sloan, lenses, equipment, it adds up. It is just a starter camera," I argued, my voice shrinking. "And the workshop is only $200. Mom sighed. The sound of a martyr being asked to carry one more cross. "We just paid for Kinsley's recital fees. Honey, and her costume fittings. Things are tight right now. You know that." I looked at Kinsley. She was eating her mashed potatoes, oblivious. She did not even look up. "You need to be realistic," Dad added, picking up his fork. "Focus on your studies. Focus on getting a scholarship so you can go to college. Art is nice, but it does not pay the bills. We have to prioritize." Prioritize. That was the word. Kinsley was the priority. I was the option. I did not argue. I washed the dishes that night, scrubbing the plates until my knuckles were red. The next day, I walked to the local grocery store and applied for a job bagging groceries. For 6 months, I worked every weekend and 3 evenings a week after school. I missed football games. I missed hanging out at the mall. I stood at the end of a conveyor belt, asking strangers if they wanted paper or plastic, smelling like onions and receipt paper. I saved every single penny. I did not buy lunch. I packed peanut butter sandwiches. I did not go to the movies. When I finally had enough money, I bought a used DSLR from a pawn shop. It was heavy and scratched, but it was mine. I spent my senior year taking photos. I took portraits of old men in the park, close-ups of rusting machinery, shots of the lonely streets at dawn. My art teacher selected 3 of my pieces for the district exhibition. It was a big deal. It was held at the city library on a Thursday night. I told my parents 3 weeks in advance. I put a reminder on the fridge. I told them the morning of. "We will try," Mom said, distracted, looking for Kinsley's gym bag. I stood by my display board for 2 hours. Other students had their families there. I watched fathers pointing at their kids' drawings, mothers holding bouquets of cheap flowers. I watched a girl named Emily get hugged by her parents after winning a ribbon. I kept checking the door. Every time it opened, my heart hammered. Maybe they were just late. Maybe traffic was bad. The exhibition ended. The lights flickered, signaling it was time to leave. My board was the only one that had not been visited by a parent. When I got home, the house was quiet. Mom was on the couch, watching television. "Oh, Sloan," she said, not looking away from the screen. "We are so sorry. Kinsley had a crisis with her math homework. She was having a total meltdown, and we just could not leave her. By the time we got her calmed down, it was too late. It is fine," I said. The words tasted like ash. It is fine. That was my mantra. That was the armor I built, layer by layer, until I could not feel the sting anymore. I went to my room, the drafty one facing the shed, and put my camera on the shelf. I did not cry. Crying implied expectation, and I had learned by then that expecting things only led to disappointment. That was the night I decided to stop needing them. If I needed nothing, they could not hurt me. I became hyper-independent. I worked through college. I paid my own rent. I fixed my own flat tires. I moved to Madison and built a life where I was the only person I had to rely on. But the tragic part of human nature is that the child inside you never really stops wanting the parent to look at you. You just bury that child deep down in the basement of your psyche. Then came the crisis. 6 years ago. I was 24. I had just started making decent money at Bright Hollow. I was finally breathing easier. Then Dad got sick. It was a heart scare, compounded by back issues that put him out of work for 3 months. The disability checks were slow to arrive. The medical bills were fast. They called a family meeting. I drove home, terrified. We sat at the same kitchen table where I had been told photography was too expensive. Dad looked gray and small. Mom looked terrified. Kinsley, then 20, was sitting there looking annoyed, scrolling on her phone. "We are underwater." "Sloan," Mom said, her voice trembling, "we have maxed out the cards. We might miss a mortgage payment. We do not know what to do." They looked at me. They did not look at Kinsley. They knew Kinsley had nothing to give. They looked at me, the sensible one, the one with the job, the one who never asked for anything. And in that moment, the buried child in the basement woke up. She saw an opportunity. "I can help." I said. The relief on their faces was a drug. It was the first time in years I felt like I was vital to them. "I can send $500 a month." I told them. "I can set it up as an auto transfer. That should cover the gap until Dad is back on his feet." "Oh, thank God." Mom breathed. "Thank you." "Sloan." I set it up the next day. $500. It was a stretch for me back then. It meant no vacations, no new furniture, no eating out. But I did it. I told myself it was temporary. Dad would get better. They would stabilize. But Dad got better, and the transfer kept running. 3 months turned into 6. 6 turned into a year. I waited for them to tell me to stop. I waited for them to say, "We are back on our feet now. Sweetheart, keep your money." They never did. Instead, the silence returned. The monthly transfer became background noise. As expected as the sun rising, they stopped mentioning it after the 3rd month. There was no thank you for the help this month. Sloan, no checking in to see if I was okay financially. I would visit and see new throw pillows on the couch. I would see Mom wearing a new watch. I would see Kinsley with a new phone. "Is everything okay with the bills?" I would ask tentatively. "Oh, it is a struggle." Mom would sigh, putting a hand to her forehead. "We are just scraping by. Everything is so expensive." So I kept paying. I kept paying because I was afraid that if I stopped, I would lose the one thing that made me valuable to them. I was buying my seat at the table. I was renting their affection. $500 at a time. And now, sitting here in the dark on my 30th birthday, the transaction history glowing on the screen, the nausea was overwhelming. It was not just that they took the money, it was that they took my sacrifice, my hard hours at work, my disciplined savings, and they handed it to Kinsley like it was water from a tap. I clicked on a transaction from 2 years ago, $1,500, label, Kinsley. Car repairs, I remembered that. Kinsley had backed her car into a pole. I was driving a car with a check engine light on because I did not want to spend the money to fix a sensor. I scrolled to another one, $300, label, concert tickets. I had not been to a concert in 4 years. I felt a tear slide down my cheek. Hot and angry. I wiped it away furiously. I was not crying for the money. I was crying for the 24-year-old girl who sat at that kitchen table and thought she was saving her family. I was crying for the 16-year-old girl who bagged groceries to buy a camera because she was told there was no money. There was money. There was always money. There was just never money for me. I looked at the date of the Paris booking again. It was 3 days after I had sent a text to Mom saying, "Work is really stressful. I am worried about layoffs." she had replied with a thumbs up emoji. And then she had used my money to send Kinsley to France. I am not surprised that they love her more. I whispered to the empty room, the realization settling over me like a shroud. I have known that since I was 8 years old. I leaned back, the chair creaking in the silence. I am not surprised they sent her to Paris. I am surprised that after all this time, after all the missed exhibitions and ignored birthdays and empty thank yous, I was still stupid enough to have hope. I closed the tab with the bank account, but the numbers were burned into my retinas. $36,000 over 6 years. That was a down payment on a house. That was a master's degree. That was a wedding fund. That was the price of my naivety. But as the clock on my laptop clicked over to midnight, signaling the end of my birthday, something shifted. The sadness began to harden. It cooled and solidified into something sharp and heavy. I was done being the bank. I was done being the backup plan. I opened a new window and typed in the URL for my personal bank, the one they did not have access to. I needed to know exactly how much damage control I had to do. But as I logged in, I remembered something else. Something vague. A memory from a few months ago. A letter from a credit card company I thought was junk mail. I had shredded it without opening it. A cold shiver went down my spine, different from the draft in the room. If they felt entitled to the cash in the joint account, where did their entitlement stop? I navigated to the credit report tab on my banking dashboard. I had not checked my credit score in a year. I knew it was excellent. I paid everything on time. I clicked Get Report. The page loaded. My eyes scanned the summary, and then they stopped. The number was wrong. My score had dropped, significantly, and under the section labeled Open Accounts. There was a number that made no sense. I had 2 credit cards, one for emergencies, one for daily use that I paid off every month. The screen said I had 4. I leaned closer, my breath fogging the screen. 2 accounts I did not recognize, opened in the last 18 months. I clicked for details. One was a store card for a high-end electronics retailer. The other was a travel rewards card. The authorized user on the travel card? K. King. The room spun. It was not just the $500 a month. It was not just the cash. They had not just drained the reservoir I gave them access to. They had drilled a hole into the dam of my financial identity. I sat there, frozen, as the wind howled outside, battering the windows of the apartment I kept cold to save money. Paris was not a gift. Paris was a crime scene, and I was the victim who had just found the weapon. The calculator app on my phone was glowing in the dark room, a small square of artificial light illuminating my shaking fingers. I typed in the number 500, then I multiplied it by 12, then I multiplied that by 6, $36,000. I stared at the sum. It was just a number, pixels on a screen. But in my mind, it converted instantly into tangible things I had denied myself. It was the down payment on the townhome I had bookmarked on Zillow, but never visited because I thought I could not afford the mortgage. It was a reliable car to replace my sedan that rattled every time I hit 40 miles per hour. It was the master's degree in data analytics I had looked at every semester for 3 years, always closing the browser tab with a sigh because the tuition seemed impossible. $36,000. That was the baseline. That was just the cash I had voluntarily handed over, thinking I was keeping my parents from eviction. But as I looked back at the bank statement on my laptop, I realized the math was much worse than simple subtraction. I was not just losing money. I was funding a lifestyle that I was not even invited to share. I clicked on the search bar of the transaction history. I filtered for outgoing transfers. The screen populated with a long, sickening list. I had expected to see payments to the local utility company. I had expected to see medical billing codes or pharmacy copays. I expected to see the mundane, gritty expenses of 2 aging parents struggling with health issues. Instead, I saw a catalog of indulgence. There was a charge for $300 at a high-end steakhouse in downtown Madison. I checked the date. It was 2 days after I had transferred my monthly contribution. That same week, I had eaten peanut butter toast for dinner 3 nights in a row because I was trying to save for a new winter coat. I scrolled down, $450 at a designer optician, not for reading glasses, for sunglasses. I knew this because the transaction detail listed the brand name, a luxury Italian label that Kinsley had been obsessed with that season. Then came the heavy hitters, the transactions that made the air in the room feel thin. I found a transfer dated 18 months ago. The amount was $9,800. My stomach dropped. That was nearly 10 grand gone in a single click. I looked at the memo line. Usually, people wrote things like rent or medical bill or groceries. The memo line read, just because, just because. I read it again, my eyes watering from the strain. Just because, who transfers $10,000 just because? I clicked on the transaction to see the destination account. It was obscured, showing only the last 4 digits. But I knew those digits. I had sent birthday money to those digits once, years ago. It was Kinsley's personal checking account. I tried to remember what happened 18 months ago. That was around the time Kinsley had moved into her new apartment. The one with the exposed brick and the granite countertops. She had told me she got a deal on the deposit. She had told me her influencer gig was finally paying off. It was a lie. My parents had given her $10,000 of family money that included my contributions, just because she wanted a pretty place to live. I felt a wave of nausea so strong I had to put my head between my knees. I took deep breaths, smelling the stale scent of my own anxiety. I sat back up and forced myself to keep looking. I needed to see the Paris connection. I needed the smoking gun that proved the photo on Instagram was not funded by some miraculous lottery win. I found it in the transactions from last week. $3,200 to Global Wanderlust Travel Services, $500 to O'Hare International Currency Exchange, $800 to Lux Luggage. The dates aligned perfectly. The money left the joint account on Tuesday. Kinsley posted her airport photo on Thursday. There was a rhythm to it, a sickening parasitic heartbeat. I opened a second window and placed my transfer history side by side with the outgoing spending. On the 1st of every month, my $500 hit the account. On the 3rd, 4th, or 5th of every month, a transaction between $400 and $600 would occur. A shopping trip, a salon visit, a cash withdrawal at an ATM near Kinsley's apartment. I was not a safety net. I was a pass-through entity. I was a money launderer for my sister's vanity. My parents were taking my money, mixing it with whatever pension or disability funds they had, and funneling it directly to the golden child. I clicked to the next page of history, my hand gripping the mouse so hard my knuckles turned white. Then I saw it. It was a transaction type I had not noticed before because it did not have a dollar amount attached to it. It was a system notification that had been logged in the history. Authorized user update. Status, approved. It was dated 2 years ago. I frowned. An authorized user on what? This was a checking account. You do not have authorized users in the same way you do on credit, unless... I looked at the linked accounts. There was an overdraft line of credit attached to the checking account. It was a standard feature to prevent bounced checks. But then I saw another tab I had never clicked. Linked liabilities. My heart started to hammer against my ribs. A frantic, trapped bird. I clicked the tab. A credit card number appeared. It was a Platinum Rewards Visa. I did not recognize the last 4 digits. I clicked for details. Primary account holder. Robert King. Joint account holder. Martha King. Authorized user. Sloan King. I froze. I had never signed for this card. I had never seen this card. I did not even know this card existed. If I was an authorized user, that meant the card's history was reported on my credit file. It meant that while I did not have the physical card, my credit score was being used to bolster the account's standing. Or worse. I grabbed my phone. It was 1 a.m. I did not care. I dialed the number on the back of my own debit card, navigating the automated menu with aggressive stabs of my finger until I reached the option for lost or stolen cards. It was the only way to get a human being on the line at this hour. A woman's voice answered, smooth and professional. This is card services. How can I help you? My voice was shaking. I am looking at a joint account I share with my parents. I see a credit card linked to it. I need to know if I'm liable for it. One moment. Please, let me verify your identity. I gave her my social security number. I gave her my mother's maiden name. I gave her the address I had lived at when I opened the joint account 6 years ago. Thank you. Ms. King, the agent said. I see the account here. You are listed as an authorized buyer on the Platinum Rewards Visa ending in 4599. I closed my eyes. Who opened this account? It was opened 2 years ago by Robert King. And how was I added? It appears you were added at the time of application, since you are a joint holder on the primary checking account used for funding. The system allows for cross-authorization if the primary applicant selects that option. My father had checked a box. He had checked a box using my name. Is there a balance? I asked, dreading the answer. Yes, ma'am. The current balance is $14,342. I choked on air. 14,000, and I hesitated, terrified of the answer. Is the account current? Minimum payments have been met, the agent said. However, the utilization is at 95% of the limit. I hung up. I did not say goodbye. I just pressed the red button and let the phone drop onto the table. $14,000 of debt. On a card I did not know existed. I went back to the credit report I had opened earlier, the one that had shown the drop in my score. Now that I knew what to look for, the numbers made sense. The open limit I had seen was this card. The debt utilization that was dragging down my score was their shopping spree. But then I saw something else on the credit report. A hard inquiry from a mortgage lender, dated 6 months ago. Why would my parents be applying for a mortgage? They already owned their house, unless they were refinancing. I looked at the notes on the inquiry. Applicant, Sloan King. The room stopped spinning and settled into a dead, cold stillness. I had not applied for a mortgage. I had not applied for anything. I clicked on the details. It was an application for a home equity line of credit, a HELOC. They had tried to take out a loan against the equity of their house, but they had used my name as a co-applicant. Why? Because their credit was shot. They needed my credit score, the score I had protected with obsessive discipline, to qualify for the loan. The application status said, denied. They had been denied, but the attempt was there. They had tried to sign me up for a loan that could have been tens of thousands of dollars, using my identity, without ever asking me. This was not just about them liking Kinsley more. Favoritism is painful, but it is legal. Parents are allowed to have a favorite child. They are allowed to give gifts to one and not the other. This was different. This was theft. This was identity fraud. I looked back at the screen, at the $19 charge for a Netflix subscription that I was paying for, at the $200 withdrawal at a casino, at the endless stream of money flowing out of my pocket and into their fantasy life. For years, I had told myself they were just bad with money. I told myself they were old-fashioned and overwhelmed. I told myself they loved me, but they were just desperate. Desperate people ask for help. Desperate people show you the bills. Desperate people apologize. My parents were not desperate. They were calculated. They knew exactly what they were doing. They kept me at a distance, feeding me scraps of affection, making sure I stayed just guilt-ridden enough to keep the auto transfer running. They used my name to extend their credit limits so they could buy Kinsley designer bags and trips to Europe. I was not a daughter to them. I was a resource. I was livestock. I was something to be harvested. I remembered the times I had visited, and Dad would ask casually, "How is work going? Did you get that bonus you mentioned?" I thought he was taking an interest in my career. Now I realized he was estimating my yield. He was checking to see if the cash cow was still producing milk. I stood up and walked to the window. My reflection stared back at me against the dark glass. I looked pale, exhausted, and small, but inside, the fire was beginning to burn. I thought about Kinsley in Paris, drinking champagne, taking selfies, probably captioning them with quotes about living her best life. She was living my best life. She was wearing my work hours on her back. She was eating my stress for dinner. I turned back to the laptop. I did not close the browser. I printed everything. I printed the last 6 years of transaction histories. I printed the credit report showing the unauthorized account. I printed the details of the HELOC application where my name had been forged or added without consent. The printer hummed and whirred in the quiet apartment, spitting out page after page of evidence. It was the sound of a gavel coming down. I was done crying. Tears were for family. These people were not family. They were scammers who happened to share my DNA. I picked up a stack of warm paper. Paris is not a gift, I said to the empty room. Paris is an invoice, and I was going to make sure they paid it. The glow of the laptop screen had become a permanent fixture in my vision, a square of artificial light burning into my retinas. It was 3 a.m. The stack of printed statements sat next to me like a physical weight. But I was done reading. It was time to act. I looked at the balance in the joint account. It was low, but there was still money there. My money. The $500 I had transferred on the first of the month was gone, swallowed by the travel agency, but there was a remaining balance from a disability check my father had received and some tax refund money they had deposited earlier in the week. I hovered my mouse over the transfer button. My instinct was to take it all, to drain the account down to 0 and leave them with the same empty feeling I had been living with for years. But I stopped myself. If I drained it all at once, the bank would send an immediate fraud alert to my father's phone. He would wake up, panic, and freeze the account before I could finish what I needed to do. I had to be surgical. I clicked the box for a transfer amount. I typed in $300. Reason for transfer. I left it blank. I hit submit. The screen refreshed. Transfer successful. I waited a minute, my heart hammering against my ribs. I expected a phone call, a siren, something. The room remained silent. I did it again. $250. Submit. I was not emptying the account. I was recovering. That was the word I forced my brain to accept. Recovering. I repeated it in a whisper, the sound harsh in the quiet room. I am not stealing. I am recovering. I looked at the transaction history one last time. They had taken $36,000 from me over 6 years. Taking back a few $100s tonight was not theft. It was a rebate. I scheduled 2 more transfers for the following day, keeping the amounts under $500 to avoid triggering the large transaction notifications I knew my father had set up. By the time they realized what was happening, I would have reclaimed nearly $1,000. It was a drop in the bucket compared to what I had lost. But it was the principle. It was the first time in my life I had reached into the family pot and taken something for myself instead of putting something in. I finally closed the laptop. I crawled into bed, pulling the duvet up to my chin. The apartment was freezing because I still had the heat turned down, but for the first time, the cold bothered me. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, and the guilt came. It arrived like a heavy, wet blanket. I thought about my father's back pain. I thought about my mother's anxiety. I imagined them standing at the grocery store checkout. Card declined, embarrassed in front of the cashier. My stomach twisted. I had been conditioned for 3 decades to be the fixer, the shock absorber, the idea of causing them distress, even necessary distress, made me physically ill. Maybe I am overreacting. The voice in my head whispered, maybe they really needed that vacation. Maybe they were going to pay me back. Then, the image of the Facebook comment floated through the darkness. She is the one who makes us proud. The guilt evaporated. It did not fade slowly. It was incinerated. They were not proud of me. They were dependent on me. There is a difference. You do not treat the things you are proud of with contempt. You do not steal from the people you respect. I closed my eyes, and for the first time in years, I did not pray for them to be okay. I prayed for myself to be strong enough to watch them not be okay. The next morning, the alarm went off at 6. Usually, I would hit snooze, dreading the day. Today, I sat up immediately. I walked into the kitchen. On the counter sat a box of instant oatmeal packets. I had eaten oatmeal for breakfast every day for 4 years because it cost 18 cents a serving. I picked up the box. I walked to the trash can. I dropped it in. I went to the bathroom and looked at myself in the mirror. My skin looked tired. My hair was pulled back in a severe practical bun. I took the elastic out and let my hair fall around my shoulders. I put on my coat and left the apartment early. I drove past the gas station where I usually bought their Sludge Light coffee because it was 99 cents. I kept driving. I pulled into the parking lot of a local roastery, the kind of place where the air smelled like roasted beans and vanilla. I ordered a latte with oat milk and an extra shot of espresso. It cost $7. When the barista handed it to me, the cup was warm and heavy. I took a sip. It was rich, creamy, and decadent. It tasted like luxury. It tasted like dignity. I sat in my car for a moment, holding the cup. $7. I used to agonize over $7. I would calculate how many minutes of work $7 represented. Today, I just drank the coffee. When I got to work, I walked differently. I could feel it. My spine was straighter. I was not walking like a woman who was carrying a secret burden. I was walking like a woman who had just set a heavy load down on the side of the road and walked away. I sat at my desk at Bright Hollow Health Solutions and opened my email. Usually, I started my day by deleting spam and organizing client requests. Today, I opened a browser tab I had visited 100 times but never acted on. It was the registration page for a professional certification course at the Madison Technical College. Advanced Revenue Cycle Analytics and Healthcare Data Systems. It was a 6-month intensive program. It was difficult. It was highly respected in my industry, and it cost $2,400. For 3 years, I had told myself I could not afford it. I had told myself that $2,400 was 5 months of family support payments. I had told myself it was selfish to spend that much on myself when my parents were struggling. I looked at the registration button. I had $14,000 of debt in my name that I had not accrued, and I had lost $36,000 in cash. By all logic, I should be more frugal than ever, but the logic had changed. The logic was now about survival. If I was going to get out of this hole, I needed to climb. I needed a better salary. I needed leverage. I needed to be undeniable. I pulled out my credit card, my real one, the one only I controlled. I typed in the numbers. My fingers did not shake this time. I hit submit payment. Congratulations. Sloan, you are registered. A thrill shot through me, electric and sharp. I had just invested in Sloan King, not Kinsley, not my parents, me. Hey, Earth to Sloan. I looked up. Megan was standing at the edge of my cubicle, holding 2 mugs. Megan was one of the few people at work I considered a friend. Though I kept her at arm's length, she was sharp, funny, and had a no-nonsense attitude that I admired but found intimidating. You have been staring at that screen for 10 minutes with a look on your face like you just buried a body or won the lottery, she said, raising an eyebrow. Which is it? I looked at her, usually. I would deflect. I would say, just tired or Monday blues. I just spent $2,000 on a course. I said, Megan's eyes widened. The analytics one? The one you said was too expensive? Yes. She set the mugs down. Good for you. Seriously, you are the smartest person in this department. Sloan, it is about time you realized it. She lingered, looking at me closely. There is something else. Though, you look different. How? I asked. Like you are done taking prisoners, she said. I let out a short, dry laugh. You have no idea. Do you want to grab lunch? She asked. Real lunch. Not you eating a sad sandwich at your desk while checking spreadsheets. I looked at the stack of files on my desk. The old Sloan would have said she was too busy. The old Sloan would have wanted to save the $15 a lunch would cost. Yes, I said. Let's go. We went to a bistro down the street. I ordered a salad with grilled salmon. When the food came, I looked at it and felt a sudden, overwhelming urge to cry. It was just a salad, but it felt like a feast. Megan watched me. She did not push, but her silence was an invitation. My sister is in Paris. I said suddenly. I did not mean to say it. The words just fell out. Megan nodded. Nice for her. My parents sent her. I continued. They paid for it. Megan took a sip of her iced tea. Okay, that happens. Some parents spoil the baby. They paid for it with my money. I said. Megan stopped with her glass halfway to her mouth. She set it down slowly. What do you mean? I told her. I did not tell her everything. I did not tell her about the credit fraud or the identity theft. That felt too raw, too legal. But I told her about the $500 a month. I told her about the 6 years of saving them. I told her about the birthday dinner that never happened and the Instagram post. When I finished, Megan was quiet. She looked angry, which surprised me. I expected pity. I hated pity. But Megan looked furious. Sloan, she said, her voice low and hard. That is financial abuse. I flinched at the word. Abuse felt physical. It felt like bruises. This was just money. It is, she insisted. They conditioned you. They groomed you to be their ATM so they could play happy family with your sister. That is sick. I looked down at my plate. I feel stupid. I whispered, I let it happen. Megan reached across the table and grabbed my hand. Her grip was tight. Stop that. Right now. You are not stupid. You are a good person who loves her family. They weaponize that love against you. That is on them, not you. She squeezed my hand again. You are not an ATM. Sloan, you are a person. You are a human being who deserves to keep the money she earns. You deserve to go to Paris. You deserve to buy a damn course without feeling guilty. I looked up at her. Her eyes were fierce. You are right, I said. So what are you going to do? She asked. I sat up straighter. I cut them off. Last night? Megan smiled. It was a slow, shark-like smile. Good. When I got back to my apartment that evening, the silence felt different. It was no longer the silence of loneliness. It was the silence of a fortress. I sat down at my kitchen table, but not to brood. I opened a new spreadsheet. I named it the Sloan Protocol. I created columns, rent, utilities, food. I created a column for education. I entered the cost of my new course. I created a column for legal fund. I did not know how much I would need, but I started putting $50 a week into it mentally. Then I looked at the row where I usually tracked my expenses. There was a cell labeled Family Support. I highlighted the cell. I hit the delete key. The cell vanished. The numbers in the savings column automatically recalculated, jumping up by $500 a month. I stared at the new projection. In 1 year, I would have $6,000 saved. In 2 years, I could move to a better apartment. In 5 years, I could be entirely free of the debt they had saddled me with. Provided I could get the legal mess sorted out, I felt a strange sensation in my chest. It was hope, not the desperate, pleading hope I used to have that they would love me. This was a cold, mathematical hope. It was a hope based on variables I could control. I picked up my phone. I opened Instagram. Kinsley had posted again. She was standing in front of the Louvre, holding a baguette, looking adorable and carefree, living the dream, the caption said. I looked at her face. I looked at the expensive coat she was wearing, a coat that I had likely paid for with my overtime hours. I did not feel jealous. I did not feel sad. I felt done. I double-tapped the photo. Liking it, it was a petty gesture. Perhaps, but to me, it was a goodbye. Enjoy it. Kinsley, I thought. A small, cold smile touching my lips. Enjoy the last vacation I will ever buy you. I put the phone down, turned off the screen, and opened the first textbook for my new course. The first chapter was titled, Identifying Loss in the System. I picked up a highlighter. I have already identified the loss. I murmured to myself, now I am going to stop the bleeding. 2 weeks of silence is a strange thing when you have spent a lifetime waiting for noise. For 14 days. My phone did not ring. There were no texts asking for favors, no guilt-tripping voicemails about heating bills, and no updates on Kinsley's European adventure other than what I saw on social media. I used that silence to build a fortress. I went to work, I studied for my new certification, and I moved my money. I had successfully transferred $2,000 back into my personal account. It was a fraction of what they had taken, but it felt like a victory. I had also canceled the recurring transfer. The first of the month had come and gone 2 days ago, for the first time in 6 years. The $500 stayed in my pocket. I knew the blowback was coming. I was just waiting for the check to bounce. It happened on a Tuesday evening. I was sitting at my kitchen table, highlighting a chapter on insurance claim denials, when my phone began to vibrate against the wood. It was my father. I stared at the screen. My heart rate spiked, a conditioned response I had not yet unlearned, but I forced my breathing to remain steady. I picked up the phone on the 4th ring. "Hello, Dad?" "Sloan." His voice was breathless, tight with a panic that usually sent me scrambling to fix things. "You need to log into the bank, right now." I leaned back in my chair, capping my highlighter. "Why?" "There is a glitch, a hacker or something. I went to pay the mortgage and the transaction was declined. It says insufficient funds. And when I looked at the history, there are unauthorized transfers. Someone has been draining the account for 2 weeks." He paused, waiting for me to gasp, waiting for me to jump into action. I remained silent. "Sloan, did you hear me? We are missing nearly $2,000, and the monthly deposit, your deposit, it is not there. The system is completely messed up. You need to call the bank. You are better at talking to them than I am." I took a sip of my water. "It is not a glitch." "Dad?" There was a pause on the other end, a heavy, confused static. "What do you mean?" "I mean there is no hacker," I said, my voice calm, steady, and terrifyingly flat. "I moved the money." "You what?" "I transferred the money back to my personal account, and I canceled the monthly auto draft." The silence that followed was different. It was not confused anymore. It was stunned. Then, it turned sharp. "You took money out of the joint account?" "Sloan, that is family money. That is for the bills. That is for the house. What are you thinking?" "I am thinking that I am tired of paying for things I do not use." I said. "Sloan, listen to me," he said, his voice dropping into that reasonable, patronizing tone he used when he wanted to make me feel small. "I know you are stressed at work. I know you are tired, but you cannot just raid the family account because you are having a bad week. We rely on that money. That is our safety net. That is for emergencies." The word hung in the air between us. "Emergencies, emergency." I repeated, "Yes." Dad's voice gained confidence. "God forbid something happens to your mother, or the car breaks down. You know my back is bad. We need that cushion. You promised to help us. Is Paris an emergency?" I asked. The line went dead silent. "Excuse me." I asked if Paris was an emergency. I said, enunciating every syllable. "Because I looked at the transaction history. Dad, I saw the travel agent fees. I saw the shopping spree. I saw the $9,000 you transferred to Kinsley just because," he sputtered. "That is different." "How is it different?" I asked. "You told me you were drowning. You told me you might lose the house. For 6 years. I have been eating oatmeal and skipping doctor's appointments to send you money. Because I thought you were in crisis, and the whole time, you were using my money to fund Kinsley's lifestyle." "We did not use your money for Kinsley," he shouted, losing the calm facade. "We used our money for Kinsley. Your money went to the electric bill. Money is fungible." "Dad," I said, using a term from my new textbook, "if I pay the electric bill so you can use your cash to buy plane tickets to France, then I am paying for the plane tickets. It is the same pool, and I am done swimming in it." "Sloan, you are being unreasonable. Kinsley has had a hard year. She needed a win. She needed this trip to find herself. I need to find myself too," I said, "and I think I found myself in my own bank account. I am warning you." "Sloan," he said, his voice turning dark, "you are putting this family at risk. If the mortgage bounces, that is on you." "No," I said, "if the mortgage bounces, it is because you spent the mortgage money on champagne and macarons." I hung up. My hands were shaking. but not from fear, from adrenaline. I had said it. I had finally said it. I did not have to wait long for the second wave. My mother called 2 hours later. She did not start with panic. She started with tears. I picked up the phone and heard the familiar sound of her weeping. It was a sound that used to tear me apart. Now, it sounded like a performance. "I do not understand what has gotten into you," she sobbed. "I really do not. We raised you to be kind. We raised you to be generous. And now you are attacking us? You are attacking your sister? I am not attacking anyone. Mom, I am just balancing my checkbook. You are being incredibly selfish." "Sloan," she snapped, the tears vanishing instantly, replaced by venom. "You make good money. You have a steady job. You have no husband, no kids. What do you need all that money for? You are sitting on a pile of cash while your family struggles?" I laughed. It was a harsh, barking sound. "Struggles? Mom, Kinsley is in Europe. She is staying at a hotel that costs $400 a night. I know because I checked the credit card statement. She deserves it," Mom screamed. "She is the one who makes us proud. She is out there living her life, chasing her dreams, not hiding in some depressing apartment hoarding pennies like you." The words hit me like a physical slap. She is the one who makes us proud. She had said it to my face now. It was not just a Facebook comment. It was the truth. "Why did you lie?" I asked, my voice dropping to a whisper. "Why didn't you just tell me? Why didn't you say, 'Sloan, we want to give Kinsley a vacation. Can you pay for it?'" "Because we knew you would be jealous," Mom retorted. "You have always been jealous of her. You are bitter. Sloan, you have always been bitter because she shines and you just work. I just work," I repeated. "I just work so you can eat. You are twisting everything," she said, dismissing my reality. "You are making this into some big drama because you want attention. Well, congratulations. You have our attention. Are you happy now that you have terrified your father? His blood pressure is through the roof. If his blood pressure is high, tell him to cancel the data plan for Kinsley's international roaming." I said, "That should save enough for his medication." "You are a cold, heartless girl," she spat. "I am not a girl. Mom, I am a 30-year-old woman who just realized she has been an orphan for 6 years. I hung up on her too." I sat in the dark living room, staring at the wall. The insults replayed in my head. Selfish, bitter, cold. They were projecting. They were taking all the things they were guilty of and pasting them onto me so they did not have to look in the mirror. My phone lit up again. FaceTime. Request. Kinsley. I stared at the screen. I almost let it ring out. I did not think I could handle the third head of the Hydra tonight, but a morbid curiosity took over. I wanted to see her. I wanted to see the face that cost me $36,000. I accepted the call. Kinsley's face filled the screen. She was glowing, literally glowing. The lighting was perfect, likely a ring light she had packed in her suitcase. Behind her, the Eiffel Tower glittered in the night sky. "Sloan," she squealed. "Oh my God, you finally answered. I have been trying to call you all day, but the service here is surprisingly trash." She looked happy, uncomplicatedly, radiantly happy. "Hi, Kinsley," I said. "Look at this view." She spun the camera around. "Is it not insane? It looks exactly like the movies. And we went to this dinner tonight. I ate snails. Snails. Sloan. They were actually gross, but I pretended to like them for the content." She laughed, a bubbling, infectious sound. I watched her, and I realized something that made my stomach turn. She did not know. She genuinely did not know. "Mom and Dad told me you were super busy with work." She continued, turning the camera back to herself, "But I wanted to say thank you." I froze. "Thank you for what?" "Mom told me," she said, her voice turning conspiratorial and sweet. "She told me you sent extra money this month to help them out with the house stuff, so they could afford to give me this trip. That was so sweet of you. Sloan, I know we do not always get along, but seriously, you are the best big sister." I stared at her pixelated face. My parents were masters. They were artists of manipulation. They had taken my money, given it to her, and then framed it in a way that made them look like the benevolent providers while simultaneously keeping me in the role of the boring, dutiful provider who helps the parents. They had stripped me of even the credit of the gift. To Kinsley, I was not the benefactor. I was just the mechanic keeping the engine running so Mom and Dad could drive the car. Kinsley was not evil. She was just a pet. She was a golden retriever raised in a house where everyone else starved to buy her kibble. And she thought it was normal because nobody had ever told her otherwise. She lived in a reality distortion field created by my parents. But that did not mean she was innocent. Ignorance is a privilege, and she had been abusing that privilege for 26 years. "Are you still there?" Kinsley asked. Tapping the screen. "You look frozen." "I am here." I said, "So, listen, I saw this bag at the Galleries Lafayette today." She said, leaning in, "It is to die for." I was thinking of asking Mom for an advance on my birthday money. Do you think she is in a good mood? The rage I had felt toward my parents cooled into something icy when I looked at her. She was 26. I was paying my own rent at 22. "Kinsley," I said. "Yeah?" "Mom and Dad are not in a good mood," I said, "and there is no birthday money." Her smile faltered. "What do you mean?" "I mean that the bank of Mom and Dad is closed," I said, "and it is closed because the actual bank, me, has stopped making deposits." She frowned, looking confused. "I do not get it. You do not have to get it," I said. "You just have to know that the credit card you are using is maxed out, and the cash transfers are over." But she stammered, looking around as if the Parisian air had suddenly turned cold. "But I have 3 more days here. I have a hotel reservation. I hope it is prepaid." I said, "Sloan, stop," she said, a nervous laugh bubbling up. "You are scaring me." "You are joking, right?" I looked at her. Really looked at her. I saw the fear in her eyes. It was the fear of a child who has lost sight of her mother in a grocery store. But she was not a child. "I am not joking." "Kinsley, but what am I supposed to do?" she whined, her voice pitching up. "Figure it out," I said. "That is what adults do." "Sloan, do not hang up." I moved my thumb to the red button. "Enjoy the view." "Kinsley," I said, "but remember, you might be wearing my rent money. But that coat does not belong to you any more than this trip does." "Sloan." I tapped the screen. Her face vanished. The Eiffel Tower vanished. I was back in my dark living room in Madison, Wisconsin. I put the phone down on the table face down. I expected to feel guilty. I expected the old programming to kick in, telling me I was a monster for stranding my baby sister in a foreign country. But I did not feel guilty. I felt light. I picked up my highlighter again. I found my place in the textbook. Section 4. Mitigating Financial Risk. I underlined the title, Risk Mitigated. I whispered, the silence in my apartment used to feel like a void, a space where my loneliness echoed off the walls. Now, 3 weeks after cutting off the financial supply line to my family, the silence felt like a clean slate. It was the quiet of a library or a laboratory. It was the sound of focus. I threw myself into the revenue cycle analytics course with a ferocity that bordered on obsession. For years, my brain had been occupied by the chaotic, emotional calculus of keeping my parents afloat, calculating how many days until the electricity might get cut off, or how much overtime I needed to cover Kinsley's unexpected expenses. Now that I had evicted those worries from my mind, I had a terrifying amount of mental energy to burn. The classroom at the technical center was beige and smelled faintly of floor wax, but to me, it was a sanctuary. While other students groaned about the complexity of denial management workflows and payer adjudication, I drank it in. It made sense. In the world of healthcare data, if there was a discrepancy, there was a reason. If money was missing, there was a trail. It was a binary world of cause and effect. So unlike the murky, gaslit reality I'd been living in with the King family, I sat in the front row. I took notes in color-coded ink. When the instructor, Mr. Halverson, asked a question about optimizing cash flow velocity. My hand shot up before I even processed the thought. I was not just learning a trade, I was reformatting my hard drive. During the second week, during a break by the vending machines, a woman named Sonia approached me. She was older, 44, with laugh lines around her eyes and a no-nonsense haircut. She had been a nurse for 20 years before blowing out her back and pivoting to administration. "You attack those spreadsheets like they owe you money," she said, leaning against the wall with a cup of bad coffee. I looked up, startled. "I just want to get it right." Sonia studied me over the rim of her cup. Her eyes were shrewd. She had the look of a woman who had seen everything in the ER and nothing impressed her anymore. "It is not just about getting it right," she said. "I have seen that look before. You are not running toward a career. You are running away from a fire." I capped my pen. "Is it that obvious?" "Honey," she said, sitting down opposite me. "When I left my ex-husband, I learned to code in 6 weeks. I did not sleep. I did not eat. I just coded. Because as long as my brain was busy with syntax, I did not have to think about the fact that I had wasted 15 years on a man who acted like a toddler. I felt a shock of recognition. I had not told anyone in the class about my situation, but Sonia saw it. "My family," I said, keeping it vague. "Not a husband, just family." "Same difference." Sonia shrugged. "Toxic is toxic. It does not matter if it shares your DNA or your bed. If it poisons the well, you have to seal it off." We started eating lunch together after that. Sonia became a strange sort of anchor for me. She did not coddle me. When I told her about the guilt I felt when my dad's calls went to voicemail, and they went to voicemail every single day, she did not say, "Oh, poor you." She said, "Keep it in the voicemail. Do not let it into your head." She taught me that boundaries were not walls you built once and forgot about. They were fences you had to patrol every single day. By the 4th week, Mr. Halverson asked me to stay after class. He was a dry man, a retired hospital administrator who wore sweater vests and rarely smiled. But he had a sharp mind. "Ms. King," he said, shuffling his papers, "you have a natural aptitude for this. You see the patterns in the billing cycles that most people miss." "Thank you," I said, feeling a flush of pride that was foreign to me. "I have a contact at Lakeshore Medical Center," he continued. "They are looking for a junior analyst in their revenue integrity department. It is not sales. It is pure data work. The pay is better than what you are likely making now, and the benefits are comprehensive." I stared at him. Lakeshore was the biggest hospital system in the state. Getting a foot in the door there was notoriously difficult. "I am not finished with the certification yet." I said, "They will hire you on a probationary basis while you finish." He said, "I already sent over your midterm scores. They want to interview you on Thursday." I walked out to my car that night feeling like I was floating. For 30 years, my value had been determined by how much I could give, how much I could sacrifice, how small I could make myself to fit into the cracks of my family's dysfunction. Now, a stranger was telling me I had value simply because I was competent. The interview was terrifying, but not in the way family dinners were terrifying. I sat in a sleek conference room with 3 directors. They asked me about variance analysis. They asked me how I would handle a denied claim from a major payer. I did not have to lie. I did not have to manage their emotions. I just answered. I spoke the language of logic. When I finished my explanation of how to track aged receivables, the director of finance, a stern woman named Mrs. Gable, nodded. "That is a very thorough approach. Miss King," she said, "most people just write it off. You seem to care about the details. The details are where the truth is." I said. She smiled. It was a genuine smile. I walked out of that building knowing I had the job. I did not have the offer letter yet, but I knew. I felt it in my bones. I was competent, I was capable, and I was going to be free. But the universe has a way of testing your resolve just when you think you are safe. When I got home that evening, there was a stack of mail on my mat. I saw the familiar handwriting instantly. My mother's looping, decorative script. It was a card, a heavy pink envelope. My birthday had been a month ago. I carried the mail to the kitchen table. I did not open it immediately. I made tea. I changed into sweatpants. I treated the envelope like a hazardous object that needed to be handled with protective gear. Finally, I slid it open. A check fluttered out. It was for $50. I stared at it. $50. The memo line said, "For a nice dinner. We miss you." I opened the card. It was a generic Hallmark card with flowers on the front. Inside, my mother had written, "Sloan, we know things have been tense. We are just so worried about you. You have been working so hard and we feel like we are losing touch. Here's a little something to treat yourself. Please call us. We are a family. We need to stick together. Love, Mom and Dad." I looked at the check again. $50. They had taken $36,000 of my cash. They had racked up $14,000 of debt in my name. They had tried to take out a mortgage on my credit, and they sent me $50. It was not a gift. It was a bribe. It was a token to soothe their own consciences. A way for them to say, "See, we support her too. We give her money too." It was the bare minimum effort required to maintain the delusion that we were a normal, functioning family. A month ago, I would have cashed it. I would have felt a pathetic surge of gratitude that they remembered me at all. I would have called them and thanked them, and the cycle would have restarted. I picked up the check. I did not tear it up. That would be emotional. That would be reacting. I walked to my filing cabinet. I pulled out a folder I had labeled evidence. I dropped the check inside, right next to the printed bank statements and the credit report. It was not money. It was an exhibit. I went back to the rest of the mail, a flyer for pizza, a utility bill, and a plain white envelope with no return address, just a postmark from Milwaukee. I frowned. I did not know anyone in Milwaukee. I opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper, photocopied. The paper looked old. The copy was grainy, showing the creases and stains of the original document. There was a sticky note attached to the front. "Sloan, I heard through the grapevine that you finally stopped the payments. Good. You took longer than I expected, but better late than never. I found this while going through your grandmother's old boxes in the attic. I think you deserve to see it. Be careful. They are not just greedy, they are desperate. Aunt Marjorie, my father's older sister, the black sheep of the family, or at least, that is what my parents called her. They said she was difficult. They said she was cold. I had not spoken to her in years because my parents always made excuses for why we could not visit her. I unfolded the photocopy. It was a letter, handwritten. I recognized the spidery, shaky script immediately. It was my grandmother's handwriting. She had died 5 years ago. The letter was dated 6 months before her death. "My dearest Robert, I am writing this because my memory is failing, but my conscience is clear. Regarding the sale of the lake house and the remaining bonds, I've decided to structure the distribution differently than we discussed. I know you have had your struggles with money. I know you and Martha have high expenses with Kinsley's schooling and her needs, but I'm worried about Sloan. You told me Sloan is doing well, that she has a high-paying job and does not need help, but when I saw her at Christmas, she looked thin. She looked tired. She was wearing a coat with a frayed hem. I am leaving the bulk of the liquid assets, the $100,000 from the bonds, in a trust. It is meant to be split evenly between the girls when they turn 25. I have set you as the executor because I trust you to do the right thing by your daughters. Do not use this money for the house, Robert, and do not use it to bail yourself out of another scheme. This is for the girls, for both of them. Promise me, love, Mom." The paper shook in my hands. $100,000. Split evenly. That meant $50,000 was mine. My grandmother had left me $50,000. I looked at the date again. 5 years ago. I was 25 when she died. The money should have been mine immediately. I tried to remember that year. That was the year my parents told me there was no inheritance. They told me Grandma died with nothing but debt and a few pieces of old furniture. They told me they had to pay for the funeral out of their own pockets, which was why they needed me to start sending the $500 a month. The room spun. I had to grab the edge of the table to steady myself. They did not just steal my income, they stole my inheritance, and then they used the fact that they had stolen it to plead poverty, tricking me into giving them even more. It was a double con, a long con. I thought about the just because transfer of $10,000 to Kinsley. I thought about the Paris trip. I thought about the endless new clothes. They had been living off Grandma's money, my money, and Kinsley's money too. Probably. But knowing them, they had likely convinced themselves that spending it on Kinsley was what Grandma would have wanted. But the letter was clear. For both of them. I felt a coldness spread through my veins that was deeper than anger. Anger is hot. Anger burns out. This was different. This was the cold calculation of a prosecutor looking at a smoking gun. They had lied about the existence of the money. They had made themselves executors, and they had drained it. I looked at the sticky note from Aunt Marjorie again. They are not just greedy, they are desperate. She knew. She had known for years, probably, but she had stayed silent. Or maybe she had tried to speak and been cut off, just like me. I picked up my phone. I did not call my parents. I did not call Kinsley. I searched for a number I had saved in my phone a week ago. After a recommendation from Sonia, David Ross, estate and fraud attorney, it was 7 o'clock at night. I did not care. I dialed the number and left a voicemail. My name is Sloane King. I have evidence of credit fraud, identity theft, and now, likely embezzlement of a family trust by the executors. I need to know what my options are. I am not looking to settle. I am looking to audit. I hung up the phone. I looked at the $50 check on the table. For a nice dinner. I laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. $50 to keep me quiet about $50,000. I walked to the window and looked out at the streetlights of Madison. The city looked the same as it always did, but the world had shifted on its axis. I was no longer just a daughter trying to set boundaries. I was a creditor, and I was going to get every single cent back. I went to my laptop and opened a new tab. I typed in the name of the county probate court. I needed to find the official will. If Marjorie had the letter, the will had to be somewhere. I was done being the victim. Victims cry. Victims ask why. I was not asking why anymore. I was asking where. Where is the money? Where is the paper trail? Where is the justice? I would find it, even if I had to tear the house down to the studs to get it. The digital siege began at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday. I was in the middle of analyzing a complex denial trend for a cardiology clinic when my phone, which I had placed face down on my desk to avoid distractions, began to vibrate. It was not the short, rhythmic buzz of a text message or the sustained vibration of a call. It was a spasm, one notification after another, stacking up so fast the device actually rattled against the laminate surface. I flipped it over. The screen was a waterfall of banners. Facebook. Martha King mentioned you in a post. Facebook. Linda Miller commented on a post you're tagged in. Messenger. Aunt Carol sent you a message. Messenger. Uncle Dave sent you a message. My stomach tightened. A physical knot of dread that I knew all too well. This was the flying monkey assault. In the therapy blogs I'd been reading late at night, they talked about how toxic parents recruit relatives to harass the scapegoat back into submission. I just never thought my mother would be bold enough to do it publicly. I opened the app. My thumb hovered over the notification, trembling slightly. There it was. My mother had posted a photo. It was an old picture, grainy and sepia-toned, taken when I was maybe 5 years old. I was sitting on a swing, looking small and happy. The caption read, "It breaks a mother's heart when children forget where they came from. You give them life. You give them roots. You sacrifice everything for their success. And in return, you get silence. Money changes people. Status changes people. I just pray that one day, my daughter remembers that family is the only wealth that matters. We love you. Sloane, no matter how far you push us away, heartbroken family, first ungrateful." She had tagged me. She had tagged my father. She had even tagged Kinsley, who was currently posting photos of croissants in Paris. The comments section was already a dumpster fire of sympathy. Aunt Carol. Oh, Martha, I am so sorry. Kids these days just do not understand sacrifice. Neighbor Mrs. Higgins, praying for you. Martha, it is so hard when they fly the nest and forget the tree. Uncle Dave, call your mother. Sloan, this is shameful. I sat in my ergonomic office chair, surrounded by the hum of a professional workplace, feeling like I was being stripped naked in the town square. She had weaponized my silence. She had taken my boundary, my refusal to be abused, and framed it as abandonment. She had successfully painted a picture where she was the martyr and I was the cold, wealthy villain who had turned her back on her struggling parents. Money changes people. That was the line that made my blood boil. She was right. Money did change people. Her desire for my money had changed her into a predator. I stood up, grabbing my phone, and walked quickly to the break room. Megan was there, stirring almond milk into her coffee. She took one look at my face and put the spoon down. "What happened?" she asked. I handed her the phone. Megan read the post. She read the comments. Her eyes narrowed. "This is a trap," she said, handing it back. "She wants you to comment. She wants you to get angry and write something nasty so she can point at it and say, 'See? Look how mean she is.'" "So I should do nothing?" I asked, my voice tight. "I should just let them drag my reputation through the mud? My cousins are reading this. My high school friends are reading this." Megan leaned against the counter. "Usually, I would say take the high road. Usually, I would say silence is the best revenge. But Sloan, they dragged you onto the stage. They put the spotlight on you." She paused, looking at me with a dangerous glint in her eye. "If they drag you onto the stage, you have every right to take the microphone. But do not sing their song. Sing yours." I looked at the phone again. A new comment had popped up. It was from my cousin Blake. Blake was 24, the black sheep of his own immediate family because he had refused to go to college and instead started a successful landscaping business. Blake Miller. "Putting this on Facebook is wild. Aunt Martha, maybe call her instead of performing for the audience?" My heart leaped. An ally. Then, another comment appeared. Marjorie King. "The only thing Sloan has forgotten is how to be a doormat. Leave the girl alone." Martha. "We all know who paid for the Paris trip, and it was not you. Aunt Marjorie. The woman who had sent me the letter about the trust fund. She had stepped out of the shadows and fired a warning shot. My mother's reply came seconds later. Marjorie, this is a private family matter. Please stay out of it. Blake Miller. You made it public when you tagged her. LOL. I looked at Megan. Marjorie just opened the door. I said, "Then walk through it." Megan said, "But do not be emotional. Be an analyst. Give them data." I nodded. I walked back to my desk. I did not sit down. I stood, feeling the adrenaline sharpen my focus. I opened my banking app. I took a screenshot of the transaction history from the joint account. I opened the photo editor. I used the black marker tool to cross out the account numbers. I crossed out the routing numbers. I left the dates visible. I left the amounts visible. I left the recipient names visible. Transfer to Kinsley King. $9,800. Global Wanderlust. Travel. $3,200. Lux Luggage. $800. Just because I looked at the image. It was not a rant. It was a ledger. I went back to Facebook. My hands were steady now. I was not the scared daughter anymore. I was the auditor. I typed my comment. "Mom, I agree that family is important. That is why for the last 6 years, I have transferred $500 a month from my salary to your joint account because you told me you were at risk of losing the house due to medical bills. That is a total of $36,000. I did not stop talking to you because of money. I stopped the transfers because 2 weeks ago, I found out that my emergency contributions were being used to fund Kinsley's vacation to Paris, designer clothes, and luxury dinners. While I was eating instant oatmeal to save money, I also discovered $14,000 of credit card debt opened in my name without my consent. You posted a photo of Kinsley in Paris last week with the caption, 'She is the one who makes us proud.' I think it is fair that the person who paid for the trip gets to set the record straight. I hit post. I stared at the screen. The little spinning circle turned once, twice, comment, posted. I put the phone down. I felt a strange ringing in my ears. It was the sound of a nuclear bomb detonating in a quiet room. For 3 minutes, nothing happened. Then, the phone lit up. Blake Miller liked your comment. Marjorie King liked your comment. Sarah Jenkins, my high school best friend, liked your comment. Then the replies started coming in. Not from the flying monkeys, from the audience. Neighbor Mrs. Higgins. Wait, is this true? Uncle Dave. Sloan. Delete this immediately. Random friend. OMFG. The receipts. I watched the reaction count climb. 5 likes, 20, 50. People love a tragedy, but they love an exposed hypocrite even more. My mother had tried to paint a masterpiece of victimhood, and I had just slashed the canvas with a razor blade of facts. 5 minutes later, my phone rang. It was Mom. I declined the call. It rang again immediately. I declined it again. Then Dad called. I let it ring until it went to voicemail. Then the notification banner at the top of my screen changed. Martha King has deleted her post. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. She had panicked. She realized the narrative was slipping out of her control. She tried to scrub the evidence, to pull the curtain back down. But the internet is forever, and the damage was done. The family group chat, which I had muted but not left, was exploding. Aunt Carol. Did anyone save what Sloan wrote? Cousin Blake. I screenshotted it. Sending it now. Uncle Dave. This is a disaster. We need to have a meeting. I sat back in my chair. I felt exhausted, but also clean. I had told the truth. I had not embellished. I had not called them names. I had just shown the math. An hour later, my desk phone rang. Not my cell. My work line. I stared at it. Only a few people had this number. Hello. This is Sloan. Sloan. It was my father. His voice was not the frantic, bullying tone he had used 2 weeks ago. It was low, grave, and terrifyingly calm. Hello. Dad, you have embarrassed your mother in front of the entire community. He said, she is in the bedroom hyperventilating. She cannot stop crying. She embarrassed herself. Dad, I said, keeping my voice professional. She posted the lie. I just posted the correction. We need to stop this, he said. This public spectacle. It is beneath us. It is undignified. Identity theft is also undignified, I said. He sighed. A long, weary sound that was meant to make me feel like a petulant child. We need to meet. Sloan. Face to face. No screens, no texts, just family. We need to sit down and sort this out before it goes any further. There are complexities you do not understand. Complexities. I repeated, is that what we are calling the trust fund now? There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end. You know about the trust? He whispered. I know everything. Dad, I know about the letter. I know about the $50,000. I know about the HELOC application. There was a long silence. Come to dinner, he said. Tomorrow night. At the house. We will explain. We will make a plan to rectify things. We can work out a payment plan. But you have to stop posting. You have to stop talking to Marjorie. She is poisoning your mind. I looked at the sticky note from Marjorie that I had taped to my monitor. They are desperate. I am not coming to the house. I said, I am not stepping foot on that property. Then where? He asked, desperation creeping into his voice. Please, Sloan, if you go to a lawyer if you report this, your mother could get in trouble. Serious trouble. Do you want to see your mother in handcuffs? The manipulation was seamless. He pivoted from anger to guilt in a heartbeat. I do not want anyone in handcuffs. I said, I just want what is mine. Then meet us. Fine, I said, but not at the house. We will meet at the Oblivious Olive on 3rd Street. It is public. It is neutral. Fine, he said. 7 o'clock. Just us. Please, Sloan, do not bring anyone. This is family business. I paused. I looked at the redacting marker on my desk. I will be there, I said. I hung up. I sat there for a moment, thinking about his request. Just us. He wanted to isolate me. He wanted to get me back in the room where the old dynamics worked, where he was the patriarch and I was the obedient daughter. He wanted to use the physical pressure of their presence to bend me back into shape. I picked up my cell phone. I opened a text thread. Me. They want to meet. Tomorrow night. 7 p.m. The Olive. Megan. Do not go alone. Me. I know, but I need a witness who knows the history. I scrolled through my contacts until I found the number for Aunt Marjorie. I had never texted her before. Me. Aunt Marjorie. This is Sloane. I am meeting them tomorrow. I am going to put the evidence on the table. I would appreciate it if you were there. The response came 3 dots at a time. Marjorie. I have been waiting for this invitation for 20 years. I will be there early. I wasn't done. I opened the Instagram app. Kinsley had posted a story an hour ago. A black screen with a crying emoji. Some people just want to watch the world burn. Sending love to my mom. I tapped the message icon. Me. I am meeting Mom and Dad tomorrow at 7 at the Olive to discuss the trust fund and the fraud charges. If you want to know how you actually got to Paris, you should come. I did not expect a reply. Kinsley was likely in full victim mode, comforted by her echo chamber, but then, the typing indicator appeared. Kinsley. I am home. I flew back early because Mom wouldn't stop screaming on the phone. I will be there. I put the phone down. I was walking into the lion's den, but I wasn't walking in with a stake. I was walking in with a whip. I spent the rest of the afternoon printing. I printed the Facebook post. I printed the comments. I printed the letter from Grandma. I printed the text messages where Mom had asked for money for heating bills on the same days she bought designer shoes. I organized them into 3 binders. One for me, one for them, one for the witness. I was not going to a dinner. I was going to a deposition. As I left the office that evening, the sun was setting, casting long, sharp shadows across the parking lot. I felt a strange sense of calm. The secret was out. The shame that had kept me silent for so years had evaporated the moment I hit post. Shame thrives in the dark. I had just turned on the stadium lights. I got into my car and checked my reflection in the rearview mirror. I looked tired. Yes, but I looked solid. She is the one who makes us proud. I whispered to the reflection. No, I corrected myself. She is the one who makes you pay. I am the one who makes you accountable. I started the engine. Tomorrow, the bill would finally come due. The knock on my door came at 9 o'clock at night. It was a hesitant sound, barely louder than the rain drumming against the window pane. I was sitting on my living room floor, surrounded by the 3 binders of evidence I had prepared for tomorrow's dinner, feeling like a general surveying a battlefield before the first shot is fired. I was not expecting visitors. I was not expecting anyone. I walked to the door and looked through the peephole. The hallway was dim, but I recognized the figure instantly. It was Kinsley. But it was not the Kinsley from Instagram. It was not the girl in the trench coat sipping champagne. This Kinsley was soaking wet. Her hair was plastered to her skull. Her mascara was smeared in dark streaks down her cheeks, and she was dragging a suitcase that looked like it had been thrown down a flight of stairs. She looked small. She looked 26, going on 12. I unlocked the deadbolt and opened the door. She stood there, shivering. She was wearing a hoodie that I recognized. It was mine from high school, one she had borrowed years ago and never returned. "Can I come in?" she asked. Her voice was cracked and hoarse. I stepped aside. I did not hug her. I did not say, "Oh my God, are you okay?" I just stepped aside. She dragged the suitcase into my small entryway and left it there. She walked into the living room and stood in the center of the rug, dripping water onto the floor. She looked at the binders spread out on the coffee table. She looked at the sparse furniture. She looked at the cold, efficient life I had built. "I flew back standby," she said, staring at the binders. "I spent 14 hours in a middle seat next to a bathroom. I did not have money for an Uber, so I took the bus from O'Hare and walked from the station. "Why are you here, Kinsley?" I asked. My voice was calm, but my guard was up. I was not ready to be the big sister again. I was not ready to fix this. She turned to look at me. Her eyes were red-rimmed. "Because I went home first," she said. "I went to Mom and Dad's house. I waited. It was a war zone," she said. "Mom is in bed with a migraine, crying about how ungrateful you are. Dad is pacing around the kitchen drinking whiskey, talking about lawyers. But that is not why I left." She reached into the pocket of her wet hoodie and pulled out a crumpled piece of paper. It was a printout. "I saw this on the kitchen counter," she said. "Dad must have printed it out to show his lawyer or something. It is an email chain between him and the bank." She handed it to me. I took it. It was dated 3 years ago. It was a thread regarding a loan application denial. "Mr. King, as we discussed, your debt-to-income ratio is too high. However, if you can add a co-signer with a credit score above 750, we can reconsider." And then, a reply from my father. "My daughter Sloane has agreed to be added. Please process the paperwork." I looked up at Kinsley. "I already know this," I said. "I know they used my name. I know you know," Kinsley said. "But keep reading. Look at the bottom." I scanned down the page. There was another email, forwarded from my mother to my father. Subject: Paris Fund. "Robert, if we get this loan approved, we can finally send Kinsley on that trip she has been begging for. We can tell Sloane it is for house repairs. She never asks for receipts. She just pays. We need to keep Kinsley happy, or she might start asking why she did not get any of the bond money." I stared at the paper, the bond money, Grandma's trust. They knew. They had known 3 years ago that they were defrauding me to keep Kinsley quiet about the money they had already stolen from her. It was a circle of theft. They robbed Peter to pay Paul, and then robbed Paul to pay Peter, and told both of us we should be grateful. Kinsley sat down on my couch, ignoring her wet clothes. I did not know. "Sloane," she whispered, "I swear to God, I thought they were rich. I thought Dad had investments. I thought you were just, I do not know. I thought you were stingy." "Stingy," I repeated. "Yeah," she said, wiping her nose with her sleeve. "Mom always said you were obsessed with money. She said you hoarded it. She said you lived in this dumpy apartment because you were too cheap to buy nice things. I believed her. I thought you were sitting on a pile of cash and just refusing to help the family. So when they gave me things, I did not feel bad. I thought, well, at least someone is enjoying the family wealth. There is no family wealth. Kinsley," I said, "there is just my salary and their lies. I know that now," she said. She looked down at her hands. Her nail polish, usually perfect, was chipped. "But that is not the worst part," she said. Her voice trembled. "What is the worst part?" "The Instagram post," she said. I stiffened. The photo, the caption. "She is the one who makes us proud." I was in the airport lounge. She said, "I was so excited. I sent the picture to Mom." She texted me back immediately. She told me exactly what to write for the caption. She told me to use that specific phrase. I felt a cold chill run down my spine. "Why?" "Because you had declined her call the day before," Kinsley said. "You did not pick up when she called to ask about, I think it was about paying for the dog's vet bill. You sent her to voicemail. She was furious. She told me, 'Post this. Make sure you write that I am proud of you. That will teach Sloane a lesson about ignoring her mother.'" I stopped breathing for a second. It was not just a compliment to Kinsley. It was a calculated missile aimed at me. My mother had staged a public display of affection for one daughter specifically to inflict pain on the other. It was emotional warfare. It was the act of a person who knew exactly where my wounds were and decided to poke them with a hot iron. I sat down on the chair opposite the couch. I felt sick. She wanted to hurt me. I whispered, "She wanted to punish you," Kinsley corrected. "She thinks love is a currency. If you do what she wants, you get paid. If you do not, she cuts you off, and she pays someone else in front of you." Kinsley looked up at me. Her eyes were filled with a misery that looked authentic. "I am the someone else. Sloane. I am the weapon she uses to beat you, and I let her do it, because I liked the attention. I liked being the favorite. She covered her face with her hands. I am 26 years old, she sobbed, and I do not know how to pay a bill. I do not know how to file taxes. I do not know how much a gallon of milk costs. I have been playing dress up my whole life because it was easier than growing up. And now I realize I am not the princess. I am just the pet. I watched her cry. Part of me wanted to comfort her. Part of me wanted to say it was okay. But it was not okay. You enjoyed it, I said quietly. Kinsley stopped crying and looked at me. You enjoyed the trips, I said. You enjoyed the clothes. You enjoyed the fact that when we were kids, you got the room with the sunlight, and I got the room that smelled like mildew. You might not have known where the money came from, Kinsley, but you knew the dynamic. You knew I was the second-class citizen, and you never once, in 26 years, said, "Hey, maybe Sloane should get a turn." Kinsley flinched. You are right, so do not expect me to hug you and tell you all is forgiven. I said, an apology does not erase 26 years of being treated like a utility bill. While you were treated like an asset, I do not expect you to forgive me. Kinsley said. She wiped her face and sat up straighter. I am not here to ask for money, and I am not here to ask you to save Mom and Dad. Then what are you doing? I am defecting, she said. She gestured to the suitcase. I am not going back to their house. I texted Lindsay, my friend from high school. She has a spare room in her apartment on the east side. She said I can crash there for 2 weeks. And then I get a job. She said, a real one, not influencer nonsense. I applied to Starbucks on the bus ride over here, and I am going to the registrar's office at the community college tomorrow. I dropped out 3 years ago. But my credits might still be good. I want to finish my degree. I looked at her skeptically. You are going to work at Starbucks? If they hire me. She said, if not, I will scrub toilets. I do not care. I just cannot take another dime from them, not now that I know it is yours. She reached into her purse and pulled out a wallet. She took out a credit card. It was the Platinum Visa, the one linked to the debt in my name. She placed it on the coffee table. Then she took a pair of scissors from my desk organizer and cut it in half. I am done, she said. I looked at the pieces of plastic. It was a small gesture, but it was significant. I picked up the cut card and dropped it into the ashtray I used for paper clips. You know they are going to lose their minds, I said, when you leave. When they realize they have lost control of both of us, I know, she said. They are going to blame you. They are going to say you poisoned me against them. I did not poison you. I said, I just showed you the antidote. Kinsley looked at the binders again. Are you really going to meet them tomorrow? She asked. Yes, I said. 7 o'clock, at the Olive. Kinsley took a deep breath. She looked terrified, but there was a set to her jaw that I had never seen before. It was a family resemblance. It looked like me. I want to come, she said. I looked at her. You do not have to. It is going to be ugly. I know, she said. But if I am not there, they will lie about me. They will say I am on their side. They will say I agree with them that you are the villain. I need to be there to say it to their faces. She paused, her voice breaking slightly. And I need to see it. I need to see them without the filter. I need to see who they really are when they are cornered. Because if I do not see it, I might be weak enough to go back. I considered it. Having Kinsley there changed the dynamic entirely. It removed their ability to triangulate. It removed their leverage. If the golden child and the scapegoat were standing on the same side of the line, the parents had no power left. Okay, I said. You can come. Thank you, she said. She stood up. She looked at her suitcase. I should go to Lindsay's. She said, she is expecting me. I looked at the clock. It was late. The rain was pouring down harder than before. Lindsay lives on the east side. I said, that is a 40-minute bus ride. I will be fine, she said, though she looked exhausted. I sighed. I stood up and walked to the linen closet. I pulled out a pillow and a blanket. The couch is not comfortable, I said, and the heater rattles. But it is dry. Kinsley froze. She looked at the bedding in my hands. Her lip quivered. You do not have to sleep, I said, tossing the pillow onto the sofa. We have a war to fight tomorrow. You cannot fight if you are dead on your feet. She looked at me, and for a second, I thought she was going to hug me. I tensed up, ready to pull away. She saw it. She stopped herself. Thank you. Sloane, she said simply. I went into my bedroom and shut the door. I leaned against it, listening to the sounds of my sister settling into my living room. For 26 years, we had lived in the same house but on different planets. Tonight, for the first time, we were in the same orbit. I did not feel a surge of sisterly love. I did not feel a warm, fuzzy glow. I felt wary. I felt cautious. But as I climbed into bed, I realized something. My mother had tried to use the "she makes us proud" post to destroy me. Instead, she had used it to wake Kinsley up. She had overplayed her hand. I closed my eyes. We are not a happy family. I thought, we are not a close family. But for the first time in history, we are an honest family. And tomorrow, at 7 o'clock, we were going to serve the truth for dinner. The Olive was the kind of restaurant people went to when they wanted to pretend everything was fine. It had dim lighting, breadsticks that were always slightly cold, and acoustic covers of pop songs playing softly in the background. It was neutral territory. It was public enough to prevent screaming matches, but dark enough to hide tears. I pulled into the parking lot at 6:55. The rain from the night before had stopped, leaving the pavement slick and black under the streetlights. Kinsley sat in the passenger seat. She had traded her wet hoodie for one of my blazers. It was a little big in the shoulders, but it gave her a silhouette of authority she had never possessed before. In the back seat, Aunt Marjorie sat like a stone statue, clutching her handbag with both hands. "Are you ready?" I asked. Kinsley took a deep breath. "No, but let's go." We walked in. The hostess tried to smile at us, but the energy radiating off our trio must have been unsettling because her smile faltered. "Table for king." I said, "Right this way." She led us to a booth in the back corner. My parents were already there. They were sitting side by side, presenting a united front. My father was wearing a button-down shirt that looked like it had been ironed in a hurry. My mother had done her hair, but her eyes were puffy, and she was twisting a napkin around her fingers so tightly her knuckles were white. When they saw us, the air left the booth. They had expected me. They might have hoped for Kinsley. They had definitely not expected Marjorie. My father's jaw actually dropped. He started to stand up, his face flushing a deep, blotchy red. "Marjorie?" he choked out. "What on earth are you doing here?" "I invited her," I said, sliding into the booth opposite them. Kinsley slid in next to me. Marjorie took a chair at the head of the table, effectively boxing them in. "This is a family meeting," my mother hissed, leaning forward. Her eyes darted around the restaurant to see if anyone was watching. "This is private. Sloane, why would you bring her? She has poisoned this family for decades. I brought a witness," I said calmly, "and considering she is the only person in this family who told me the truth about Grandma's will, I think she has earned a seat at the table." My mother flinched as if I had thrown water in her face. She looked at Kinsley. "Baby," she said, her voice shifting instantly into a cooing, wounded tone. "Kinsley, look at you. You look tired. Come sit over here by Mommy. We can squeeze in. Do not sit with them." Kinsley did not move. She did not look at Mom. She looked at the menu. "I am fine here." "Mom," Kinsley said. The rejection was small, but it hit the table like a gavel. My mother's mouth opened and closed. She looked at Dad, panic rising in her eyes. "Can we just order?" Dad said, his voice gruff. He was trying to regain control, to act like the patriarch who just wanted a peaceful dinner. "We are not here to eat," I said. I placed my 3 binders on the table. The sound of the heavy plastic hitting the wood made the silverware rattle. "We are here to settle accounts." Dad looked at the binders. He looked at the redacting marker peeking out of my purse. He sighed, a long, deflating sound. "Sloane, listen," he began. "I know you are angry. I get it. The optics, they look bad." "The optics?" I asked. "Yes," he said. making a vague hand gesture. The bank transfers, the Paris trip. It looks one way to you, but there is context you are missing. We were going to pay you back. We always intended to pay you back. It was just a cash flow issue. A temporary bridge loan. A bridge loan implies consent. Dad, I said, and it implies terms. You did not ask for a loan. You took funds that were earmarked for your survival and used them for luxury. We made a mistake. Mom interrupted, tears suddenly welling up in her eyes. It was a performance I had seen 1,000 times. Is that what you want to hear? We are imperfect parents. We messed up. We just wanted Kinsley to have a nice memory because she has been so depressed lately. We didn't think you would mind because you are so strong. Sloane, you can handle anything. I stared at her. You are so strong. That was the trap. That was the compliment they used to justify the abuse. I leaned forward. Mom, I want to ask you a question. She sniffled, reaching for a tissue. What? Tell me one thing you are proud of me for. She froze. The tissue stopped halfway to her nose. What kind of question is that? Of course we are proud of you. Name one thing. I repeated. Be specific. You told the internet that Kinsley is the one who makes you proud. So tell me, what do I do that makes you proud? She looked at me. Her eyes searched my face, searching for the right answer. The answer that would make the problem go away. Well, she stammered, you are very independent. You have a good job. You pay your bills on time. I waited. And you are very organized, she added weakly. I looked at Kinsley, then I looked back at Mom. I am a spreadsheet to you. I said, that is what you are proud of. You are proud that I require zero maintenance. You are proud that I am a machine that outputs cash and inputs nothing. That is not fair, Mom cried. You have always been distant. You have always been cold. Kinsley needs us. Kinsley shares her life with us. Because you bought her life, Kinsley shouted. The restaurant went quiet. Heads turned. Kinsley never shouted. Kinsley whined. Kinsley giggled. But she never shouted. Kinsley? Dad looked at her, shocked. I saw the statements. Dad, Kinsley said, her voice shaking but loud. I went to Sloane's apartment last night. She showed me everything. The $9,000 just because, the travel agency fees, the shopping sprees. She pointed a finger at them, her hand trembling. You let me believe I was special. You let me believe we were rich. And the whole time, you were stealing from Sloane to buy my affection. You made me into a parasite. Kinsley, stop, Mom begged, reaching across the table. We did it for you. We wanted you to be happy. I am not happy, Kinsley said. I am humiliated. Do you know what it feels like to realize your entire personality is a fraud funded by your sister's overtime? We are a family, Mom sobbed, looking around wildly for sympathy. We stick together. Why are you attacking us? Sloane has turned you against us. She did not have to. Kinsley said, the math did it for her. Dad slammed his hand on the table. Enough, he roared. The silence returned, heavier this time. He glared at us, his face purple. You want the truth? You want to know why we needed the money? He leaned in, his voice dropping to a harsh whisper. I lost my job. I blinked. What? 8 months ago, he said, looking down at his plate. The company was downsizing. They let go of all the senior managers. I have been driving for a rideshare service during the day and pretending to go to the office. I didn't want to worry you girls. Mom nodded frantically. He was trying to protect you. We were terrified. We are behind on the mortgage. We are behind on everything. If we did not use your money, Sloane, we would have lost the house. We would have been on the street. I looked at them. It was a compelling story. It was the Hail Mary of excuses. But I was an analyst now. An analyst checked the timeline. You lost your job 8 months ago? I asked. Yes, Dad said, looking tragic. It has been hell. And yet, I said, opening the first binder, 6 months ago, you spent $400 at a steakhouse. 5 months ago, you bought Mom a diamond bracelet for her anniversary. Cost $1,200. And 3 weeks ago, You spent $5,000 on a trip to Paris. I pointed at the page. If you were on the verge of homelessness, why were you eating filet mignon? Why were you buying diamonds? Dad opened his mouth, but no sound came out. I will tell you why. I said, because you felt entitled to it. You thought my money was an infinite resource. You thought, Sloan will handle it? Sloan always handles it. I am sorry we spent it on luxuries, Mom said, pivoting again. We were stressed. We needed comfort. People make bad decisions when they are panicked. Panic does not buy business class tickets. I said, Sloan, please, Dad said, his voice breaking. We are in a hole, a deep hole. We need help. If you stop the payments now, if you cut us off, they will foreclose. Do you want to be responsible for putting your parents on the street? There it was. The ultimate guilt trip, the burden of their survival placed squarely on my shoulders. I looked at them. I looked at the fear in their eyes. It was real fear this time, but it was not fear of homelessness. It was fear of consequences. I am not responsible for your choices. I said, but if you are truly that broke, if you are truly at rock bottom, then we need to talk about the liabilities. I opened the second binder. I ran a credit check on myself. I said, my parents went still. I found a credit card with a $14,000 balance. Authorized user, Sloan King. Dad swallowed hard. That was a mistake. I meant to put your name on the checking account only. I must have checked the wrong box. $14,000 of mistakes, I asked. We will pay it off, he said quickly. Once I get a new job, once we settle the house, we will pay every cent. And the HELOC? I asked. The home equity line of credit you applied for 6 months ago? The one where my name was listed as a co-applicant? Mom looked away. That was just an inquiry. We didn't go through with it, because it was denied. I said, not because you stopped. I leaned back. Here is the thing. I do not believe 14,000 is the bottom. I do not believe the HELOC is the only attempt. I looked at my father directly in the eyes. I think there are other loans. I think there are other cards. I think you have been using my social security number like a master key every time you hit a wall. No, Mom cried. We would never. Then prove it. I said. I pulled a document out of the binder. It was a credit authorization form. Sign this, both of you. It authorizes a forensic accountant, paid for by me, to audit your entire financial history for the last 10 years. Every loan, every account, every asset. My father looked at the paper like it was a death warrant. We cannot do that, he stammered. That is an invasion of privacy. If you have nothing to hide, it is just paper. I said, I am not signing that, he said, crossing his arms. You are being paranoid. Then Aunt Marjorie spoke. Her voice was scratchy, unused, but it cut through the noise like a knife. Show them the letter. Sloan. I reached into the third binder. I pulled out the photocopy of Grandma's letter. I placed it on the table. Facing them, my mother gasped. She recognized the handwriting instantly. Where did you get that? She whispered. From the attic you banned me from visiting, Marjorie said. I watched my father's face. He turned a shade of gray that I had never seen before. Grandma left a trust, I said. $100,000. 50 for Kinsley, 50 for me. Dad licked his lips. That money is gone. Sloan, it went to her medical bills. The end-of-life care, it was expensive. The nursing home took it all. I expected that lie. I went to the probate court this morning. Dad, I said, I pulled the filing. I pulled out another document, a copy of the final estate settlement. The estate was solvent. The debts were paid from the sale of her car and her jewelry. The trust fund was dispersed to the executor, Robert King, 5 years ago. I tapped the paper. You didn't spend it on nursing homes. You spent it. You stole $50,000 from me and $50,000 from Kinsley. And then, when that ran out, you started stealing my salary to keep the party going. That is embezzlement, Marjorie said softly. That is a felony. My mother put her head in her hands and began to sob. Not the pretty, manipulative crying she had done earlier. This was the ugly, heaving sobbing of a woman watching her life disintegrate. Robert, do something, she wailed. Dad looked at me. His eyes were pleading. "Sloan, please, we are your parents. You cannot send us to jail. I do not want to send you to jail." I said, "I really do not." "Then what do you want?" he asked. "I want a clean break," I said. I slid a thick document across the table. It was stapled and flagged with yellow stickers. "This is a legal agreement," I said. "My lawyer drew it up this afternoon." I pointed to the clauses. 1. You acknowledge the debt of $14,000 on the visa is yours, and you accept full liability. You will remove me as an authorized user immediately. 2. You agree to a permanent freeze on my credit reports, and you sign an affidavit stating you will never use my personal information for any financial application again. 3. You agree to sell the house. "Sell the house?" Mom shrieked, looking up. "No, this is our home. It is a crime scene," I said coldly. "It is an asset you cannot afford. You will sell the house. You will use the equity to pay off the $14,000 credit card debt. You will use the rest to pay Kinsley and me whatever percentage of the trust fund you can recover. And 4, I continued, you will never, ever mention my name or Kinsley's name on social media again. No more proud parent posts. No more guilt trips. If you do, I will release the full audit to every relative, neighbor, and church member you know." Dad looked at the document. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely hold it. "And if we do not sign?" he asked. I looked at the restaurant door. "Then I walk out of here," I said, "and tomorrow morning I file a police report for identity theft, credit card fraud, and embezzlement of a trust, and I will let the district attorney decide what to do with you." My father looked at my mother. She was rocking back and forth, weeping into her napkin. He looked at Marjorie, who stared back with zero sympathy. He looked at Kinsley, who was looking at the table, tears silently streaming down her face, and finally, he looked at me. He did not see the daughter who cooked dinner. He did not see the daughter who sent $500. He saw the stranger I had become. "You would really do it?" he whispered. "You would put your own father in prison?" I stood up. I buttoned my coat. "Check your bank account, Dad," I said. I walked away from the table. Kinsley stood up and followed me. Marjorie followed her. We did not look back. We walked out of the Olive, into the cold night air. I checked my watch. It was 8 o'clock. The ultimatum expired at 9. I had given them an hour to choose between their house and their freedom, but as I unlocked my car, I knew the truth. The money didn't matter anymore. The house didn't matter. I had walked into that restaurant a victim. I had walked out a survivor, and for the first time in my life, I was actually proud. The morning after the dinner at the Olive, the sky was a bruised shade of purple, heavy with unfallen rain. I did not sleep well, but I did not wake up tired. I woke up with the buzzing energy of a soldier who knows the final battle is commencing at dawn. I had given them a deadline, but I knew my parents well enough to know they would not respect it. They operated on the logic of emotional attrition. They believed if they stalled long enough, or cried loud enough, I would revert to my factory settings and fix everything. I was not going to fix it. I was going to finish it. Before I even checked my phone for their inevitable hysterical texts, I had an appointment. I sat in the office of a credit repair specialist named Mr. Henderson. He was a quiet man with thick glasses and a humidifier humming on his desk. I had authorized him to do a deep dive, deeper than the consumer reports I could access online. He turned his monitor toward me. "Ms. King," he said, his voice dry. "We found the unauthorized Visa card you mentioned, but we also found a secondary lien application." I leaned in. "A lien? It appears your father attempted to secure a home improvement loan 6 months ago." He said, "The application lists you as a guarantor. It was not fully processed because they required a wet signature, which is likely why they stopped. But the intent is documented. They used your income statements." My income statements. I felt the blood drain from my face. To get my income statements, they would have had to raid my old room or intercept my mail. Or perhaps, in a moment of stupidity years ago, I had left a tax return on the kitchen table. They were not just using my credit score. They were actively impersonating my financial identity to leverage the equity of a house I did not own. I thanked Mr. Henderson and left with a certified file. I drove straight to the office of David Ross, the attorney Aunt Marjorie had recommended. "We are not negotiating anymore," I told him, handing over the new evidence, draft the final separation agreement, and include a clause that if they contact my employer, I will file immediate restraining orders. David looked at the file. "You think they would go after your job?" "My mother defines herself by her control," I said. "I just cut her strings. She is going to try to cut mine." I was right. 2 days later, I was sitting at my new desk at Lakeshore Medical Center. I was technically still in my probationary period, completing my certification while shadowing the senior analysts. It was a quiet, professional environment where people spoke in hushed tones about revenue cycles. My desk phone rang. I picked it up, expecting it to be a colleague. "Ms. King, this is Sarah from Human Resources. Could you please come down to my office?" My stomach dropped. The walk to the HR suite felt like walking to the gallows. I kept my head up. I had prepared for this. I had told Sarah on my first day that I was undergoing a difficult family separation involving identity theft. When I entered the office, Sarah looked sympathetic but uncomfortable. "Sloan, please sit down," she said. "We received a call this morning." "From a woman claiming to be your mother," I nodded. "I assumed as much. She made some very serious allegations," Sarah continued, looking at her notes. "She claimed that you have a history of financial instability, that you stole money from a family trust, and that you are emotionally unstable. She suggested we reconsider your employment before you cause damage to the hospital's accounts." I sat perfectly still. My mother had taken the exact crimes she and my father had committed: theft, embezzlement, instability, and projected them onto me. She was trying to torch my career because I refused to keep setting myself on fire to keep her warm. "Did she leave a callback number?" I asked. "She did." Sarah said. I pulled a folder from my bag. It contained the police report number I had filed regarding the identity theft, the notarized affidavit from Aunt Marjorie regarding the trust fund, and the cease and desist letter my lawyer had sent yesterday. "This is a documented pattern of harassment," I said, keeping my voice steady. "My parents are currently facing potential legal action for credit card fraud in my name. This call is an attempt to intimidate a witness." Sarah looked through the documents. Her expression shifted from concern to horror. "I am so sorry you are dealing with this. Sloan," she said, "is my job at risk?" I asked. Sarah closed the folder. "Absolutely not. Your background check was spotless. Your work has been exemplary. We will flag this number, and any future calls from them will be directed to our legal department as harassment. You are safe here." I walked out of that office shaking. Not from fear, but from rage. She had tried to kill my future. She had tried to take the one thing that was purely mine. That evening, I went to my parents' house. I did not go alone. I brought Kinsley, I brought Aunt Marjorie, and I brought the papers. The house looked the same as it always did. Manicured lawn, blooming hydrangeas. It was a beautiful shell hiding a rotting interior. We walked into the kitchen. My parents were sitting at the table. They looked 10 years older than they had at the restaurant. My mother's eyes were swollen. My father looked gray. They saw Kinsley and started to stand up. "Kinsley," Mom cried, reaching out. "Baby, please come home. We can fix this." Kinsley stepped back. She stood shoulder to shoulder with me. "I am not coming home." "Mom," Kinsley said, "and I am not baby. I am the 26-year-old woman you crippled with your lies." "Kinsley, do not say that," Dad said, his voice weak. "We loved you. We just wanted the best for you. You did not want the best for me." Kinsley said, "You wanted a doll. You wanted a prop to show off to the neighbors, and you cannibalized Sloan to pay for it." She looked at me. "If you do not sign Sloan's papers," Kinsley said, her voice hard, "I will never speak to you again. I will change my number. I will move cities. You will never see me. Never see your future grandchildren. You will die alone in this house." My mother let out a strangled sob. That was the only threat that mattered to her. Losing the audience. Dad looked at me. He looked at the papers on the table. "Why?" he asked. The word was a whisper. "Why what?" I asked. "Why couldn't you just help us?" he asked. The question was so sincere it was sickening. We honestly thought you could handle it. You are so smart. Sloan, you are so capable. You always figure it out. We just thought you could carry it for a while until we got back on our feet. I stared at him. That was their defense. My competence was their justification, because I was strong. I deserved to be burdened, because I could carry it. They felt entitled to load me down until my spine snapped. "I am not a mule. Dad," I said, "I am your daughter." He looked down at his hands. "But you are right," I said, "I am capable. I am capable of filing a fraud report that will put you in prison for 5 years. I pushed the pen toward him. "Sign the agreement. Agree to sell the house to pay off the debts, or I call the police right now." My father picked up the pen. His hand shook. He looked at my mother. She was weeping, but she nodded. She knew the game was over. The call to HR had been her final desperate play, and it had failed. He signed. Then he passed the pen to Mom. She signed, her tears wetting the paper. "It is done," I said. I took the papers. "You have 30 days to list the house," I said. "My lawyer will monitor the escrow. The proceeds go to the bank to clear the fraud debt. And then to the trust repayment. You keep whatever is left to find a small apartment." "Sloan," Mom whispered, "do not do this. We are family." I looked at her. I looked at the kitchen where I had eaten oatmeal while she ate steak. I looked at the living room where I was ignored while Kinsley was celebrated. "No," I said, "we are relatives. Family is the people who treat you with respect." I turned around. "Come on. Kinsley. Marjorie." We walked out. We left them in the silence of the house they could no longer afford, surrounded by the echoes of the image they could no longer maintain. Later. The townhouse was small, but it was mine. It had a brick facade and a large window in the living room that let in floods of golden afternoon light. I had bought it 3 months ago, using the money I had saved from my salary, my full salary, which I finally got to keep. The air inside smelled of vanilla cake and fresh coffee. I stood in the kitchen, lighting the candles on a cake. 31. The room was not empty. Megan was there, pouring wine and laughing about a coding error at work. Sonia was there, cutting up a baguette for the cheese board. Aunt Marjorie was sitting in the best armchair, looking regal and smug. And Kinsley was there. She looked different. Her hair was darker, tied back in a practical ponytail. She was wearing jeans and a t-shirt from the community college where she was finishing her associate's degree. She was working 20 hours a week as a barista. She looked tired, but she looked real. "Happy birthday," Kinsley cheered as I carried the cake to the table. "Make a wish," Megan shouted. I looked at the candles. The flame danced, bright and hot. Last year, I had wished for them to notice me. I had wished for them to love me. This year, I looked around the room. I looked at the women who had stood by me. I looked at the sister who had broken her own programming to stand beside me. I realized I did not need to wish for anything. I had built it. I had built a life where I was safe. I had built a career where I was respected. I had built a circle where I was loved. My parents were living in a 2-bedroom apartment on the other side of town. Dad was working security. Mom was working at a reception desk. We spoke on holidays. Brief, polite calls that lasted 5 minutes. They were learning to live within their means. They were learning that actions have consequences. They still posted on Facebook sometimes, but they never tagged me, and they never used the word proud. I blew out the candles. The smoke curled up, smelling of sugar and victory. "Did you get your wish?" Kinsley asked. Smiling, I looked at her. "I already have it," I said. I cut the cake. The first slice was big, rich, and sweet, and I ate every single bite without a shred of guilt. Thank you so much for listening to Sloane's story of reclaiming her life and her worth. It is a long road from being the family scapegoat to being the architect of your own freedom. But every step is worth it. I would love to know where you are listening from today. Please comment down below with your city or country, and let me know. Have you ever had to set a hard boundary with family to save yourself? Let's talk about it in the comments. If you enjoyed this story, please make sure to subscribe to Leona Revenge Stories for more tales of justice and resilience. Do not forget to like this video and hit that hype button to help this story reach more people who might need to hear it. Stay strong, and remember, you are not an ATM. You are a person.